The stars had always been Daniel's comfort. From the small window of his ship, he used to look out at the endless lights and think the galaxy was too big for him to matter. He had grown used to long nights drifting in silence, fixing broken parts, and surviving on ration bars. But he never thought a single mistake would push him into the story that would change everything. Daniel's ship was not built for combat or glory. It was a scavenger's vessel, patched together from old models with wires hanging loose and panels that rattled whenever the engines roared. For years he had made his living searching forgotten sectors, pulling scraps of technology from abandoned stations and ruined ships. That was his life, quiet, lonely, and predictable. At least until the storm. The storm had no warning. His navigation sensors showed calm space one moment, then chaos the next. A magnetic surge ripped through the sector, blinding his controls and forcing his ship into a spiral. Sparks flew across the cockpit. Daniel fought the controls with gritted teeth, but gravity pulled him toward the dark blue planet below. His last thought before blacking out was that he might never see the stars again. When he woke, the ship was tilted on one side. Smoke filled the cabin. His head throbbed, but he was alive. Somehow the emergency systems had softened the crash. The planet outside was strange. Its skies glowing with two suns, its ground littered with ruins that looked older than human history itself. Massive towers, broken in half, leaned against each other like forgotten giants, vines wrapped around stone and metal, pulling down what once looked like proud cities. It was as if the world had seen greatness and then lost it. Daniel stumbled outside, his boots sinking into the dust. The air was thin but breathable, heavy with the scent of ash and wild plants. He dragged crates of supplies from his wrecked ship, setting up a small camp near the ruins. His first goal was survival. Repair the ship if possible, find water and food, and avoid whatever dangers might still live here. He had no idea the planet held more than broken stone. It was on the third day that he saw her. He had been walking along a cracked stone road, searching for water, when he heard something. It wasn't the wind, nor the echo of his own boots. It was softer, fragile, like someone gasping. He raised his makeshift staff, a pipe he had pulled from the ship, and followed the sound into the ruins. Broken walls cast long shadows as the suns dipped lower, and soon he saw her. At first, Daniel thought it was a trick of light. A figure leaned against a collapsed column, her body trembling. She was tall, slender, with skin that shimmered faintly as if touched by starlight. Her hair, long and silver, fell across her face. Her clothing was torn, her hands bruised, and her eyes, large, glowing, faintly violet, watched him with both fear and desperation. She tried to move but stumbled, collapsing back against the stone. Daniel froze. He had seen many strange things in his travels, but never anything like her. She was clearly not human, yet there was something fragile in her that reminded him of his own struggles. "Stay back," she whispered, her voice shaking but clear. Her accent was strange, her words slightly broken, but he understood. She held up a piece of metal, sharp like a blade, though her hands shook too much to use it. Daniel slowly lowered his staff. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, keeping his voice calm. He could see she was weak, her lips dry, her body trembling with hunger or injury. "I have water." "Do you need it?" Her eyes narrowed, filled with suspicion. But when he showed the small canteen from his belt, her expression changed. She hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. He stepped forward, careful not to move too fast, and placed the canteen near her hands. She snatched it quickly, drinking as if she had been without water for days. When she finished, she leaned back, breathing heavily, her eyes softening just a little. "Thank you," she whispered. I'm Lyra." Daniel gave a small nod. "I'm Daniel. My ship crashed here. I didn't know anyone lived on this planet." Her expression darkened at his words, but she said nothing. Instead, she tried to stand, wincing from the effort. Daniel stepped forward instinctively, catching her before she fell again. She stiffened at his touch, her pride fighting her weakness, but she couldn't push him away. He could feel her trembling, her body too weak to support her. Without a word, he lifted her carefully and carried her back to his camp. At the fire that night, she sat wrapped in a thermal blanket he had given her. She ate slowly, as though unused to food, and studied him with wary eyes. Daniel asked no questions about who she was or why she was alone. He had learned long ago that trust was earned, not forced. Instead, he told her about his crash, about how he was trying to repair his ship. She listened quietly, only speaking when she asked about the stars. Her eyes shone when he described the endless skies and the freedom of space. It was as if she longed for it but had never truly seen it. Days passed. Daniel worked on his ship during the day, and Lyra slowly regained her strength. She spoke little of herself, but he noticed things. She knew the ruins well, guiding him toward a hidden stream where the water ran clear. She avoided open areas, watching the skies nervously as though expecting danger. She carried a broken pendant around her neck, its crystal faintly glowing when touched, though she quickly hid it whenever he noticed. One evening, as the fire flickered low, Daniel finally asked, "Why were you alone out there? Are there more of your people here?" Lyra's eyes grew distant. For a moment he thought she would not answer. Then softly she whispered, "There were more. Long ago, but they are gone. Only ruins remain." Her voice broke on the last word, and she turned away, hiding her face. Daniel didn't press her further. He simply said, "Then you're not alone anymore." His words were simple, but they made her look at him in a way she hadn't before, not as a stranger, but as someone who cared. That night, when Daniel lay in his makeshift bed, he thought about her. There was something more to her story, something heavy she carried but refused to share. He had met many beings across the stars, but never one who looked at the ruins of a broken world with such pain in her eyes. He didn't know who she really was. He only knew that he had chosen to protect her no matter what truth she hid. For now, that was enough. The suns rose again over the ruined world, spilling golden light across broken towers and long shadows. Daniel woke early, his body sore from days of work on the ship. Every morning he checked the damage: cracked engine coils, bent thrusters, half-burnt wiring. Each repair felt like patching a wound that refused to heal. Still, he kept trying. He had learned patience in the void. When he looked around the camp, he saw Lyra already awake. She sat near the stream they had discovered, her silver hair shining faintly in the light. She was quiet, dipping her hands into the cold water, staring at her reflection as if searching for answers. Daniel walked over, carrying 2 ration bars. "Breakfast," he said simply. She turned, her violet eyes sharp, then softened when she saw him. She accepted the food, biting slowly. She always ate with a strange grace, even when hungry, as if she had been taught to hold herself above need. Daniel noticed it, but he did not speak of it. He had learned she gave answers only when she wished. As they ate, he asked, "You know these ruins better than I do. Were they once your home?" Lyra paused, chewing in silence. Her gaze lifted to the towering stones covered in vines. For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly she answered, "Yes. Long ago they were full of voices, songs, the sound of life." Now, silence. Daniel studied her, but again he chose not to push further. Instead, he said, "Then maybe helping me fix my ship will bring you closer to hearing voices again. If we can get it flying, we might find survivors. Or another world for you." Her lips curved into something almost like a smile, but it faded quickly. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "Not all who search are safe. Some who hunt do not forgive." The meaning of her words was unclear, but Daniel noticed her hand brush the glowing pendant at her chest. She always touched it when she spoke of danger, as though it were both her shield and her burden. Shadows in the ruins. Over the next days, their partnership deepened. Lyra helped him gather metals from broken buildings, showing hidden pathways that Daniel would never have found alone. She knew where the stone was weak, where tunnels connected underground, and where strange machines lay half-buried beneath roots. Once, they discovered an old energy core, glowing faintly even after centuries. Daniel's eyes lit up. "With this, I can restart the auxiliary systems," he said, but Lyra's face grew pale. "Do not stay here long. Places like this, they are watched." Daniel frowned. "Watched by who?" She shook her head and turned away, unwilling to explain. That night, as Daniel worked on installing the core, Lyra sat close by, her eyes always darting toward the dark horizon. She listened for sounds beyond the crackling fire. Daniel finally asked, "Why do you always look out there?" "What are you expecting?" Lyra hesitated, then whispered, "The guard." Daniel raised his head. "Guard? What kind of guard?" Her hands clenched the blanket around her shoulders. "They are soldiers. They wear black metal and follow the old laws. They do not serve the people. They serve power. And they hunt me." Daniel's hand froze on the tools. He looked at her carefully, realizing this was the first time she had given him a true piece of her secret. Why would they hunt you? But her lips closed and she shook her head. I cannot tell you. Not yet, please, Daniel sighed. He wanted answers, but he also saw the fear in her eyes. So he only said, Then we'll keep moving carefully. If they come, I'll fight. Her eyes widened at his words. She whispered almost to herself. You would fight for me without knowing who I am? Daniel gave a small shrug. Doesn't matter who you are. You needed water. You needed food. You needed help. That's enough for me. For the first time since he had met her, she gave a true smile. Not faint, not broken, but warm. For a moment she looked less like a frightened survivor, and more like someone who had once known happiness. The first ambush had happened 3 nights later. Daniel and Lyra were walking back from a scavenging run when he noticed strange marks in the dust. Footprints. Heavy. Armored. He crouched low, his instincts from years of surviving rough worlds whispering danger. Lyra, he said softly, we're not alone. Her face went pale instantly. She grabbed his arm. We must go, now. Before Daniel could answer, shadows moved from the ruins ahead. 3 figures emerged, covered in black armor that glowed with red lines. Their helmets hid their faces, but their voices were sharp and cruel. There she is, one hissed. The lost one. The Queen's child. Daniel blinked in confusion. Queen's child? He looked at Lyra, but she shook her head, fear flooding her expression. The soldiers raised weapons, strange rifles humming with energy. Daniel pushed Lyra behind him, gripping his pipestaff. His heart raced, but he stood firm. One soldier laughed. A human? Protecting her? Fool, they fired. Bolts of red light flashed, hitting stone around them. Daniel ducked, dragging Lyra into cover. He yelled, Run! They sprinted through the ruins, weaving between broken pillars. Daniel swung his staff at one soldier who got close, striking the helmet with all his strength. The blow staggered the armored figure, buying them seconds. Lyra suddenly raised her pendant. It pulsed with light, and for a moment the air around them shimmered like a shield. The next blast from the soldiers bounced harmlessly away. Daniel's eyes widened. You had that the whole time? He shouted as they ran. It does not last long, she gasped. We must move! They scrambled into a narrow tunnel beneath a collapsed building. The soldiers' voices echoed behind them, angry but fading as the tunnel twisted deeper. Daniel's chest heaved with exhaustion, but they didn't stop until the glow of the surface was far behind. The hidden passed in, the silence of the underground chamber. Daniel turned to her. What was that? They called you the Queen's child. Who are you really? Lyra sat against the stone wall, her face pale. Her hand clutched the pendant tightly. For a long time she said nothing. Then she whispered, I cannot tell you all. But I will tell you this. I am not only a survivor. I am someone they fear. And because of that, you are in danger now too. Daniel looked at her, his body still tense from the chase. Danger's nothing new for me. But if you think I'll walk away from you now, you're wrong. Her eyes met his, wide and shining in the dim light. She whispered, almost broken, Why? Why risk yourself for me? Daniel thought for a moment, then said simply, Because no one should have to face a world like this alone. The silence stretched, filled only by the dripping of water in the cavern. Lyra lowered her head, her silver hair falling over her face, but Daniel thought he saw tears glimmering in her eyes. The bond in the days that followed, something changed between them. Lyra no longer spoke, only in fragments. She told him small pieces of her life. Not the whole truth, but enough to let him know she once lived in a palace of crystal towers, surrounded by songs of her people. She told him she had lost everything in a single night of betrayal, forced to flee into the ruins. Daniel listened, never judging, never pushing for more than she wished to share. And slowly her trust deepened. At the same time, danger grew closer. They saw more signs of the guard, burned camps, broken walls, tracks of armored boots. Daniel kept watch at night, gripping his staff while Lyra sat close to the fire, her pendant glowing faintly as if warning her of unseen eyes. But even in fear, there were moments of peace. They shared stories by the fire, his tales of drifting through forgotten stations, her memories of gardens that no longer bloomed. She laughed once at his clumsy way of cooking, and he smiled at the sound, thinking it was worth every risk to hear it again. And though Daniel still did not know who she truly was, he knew one thing clearly: he would stand with her no matter what truth came. The ruins felt less silent now. Ever since the ambush by the royal guard, Daniel moved with sharper eyes and heavier steps. He knew they were being hunted and every shadow looked alive. Yet even with danger pressing closer, he stayed. Something inside him would not allow him to abandon Lyra. The two of them traveled further across the broken city. Lyra walked ahead most times, guiding Daniel with quiet confidence. She always seemed to know the safest path, which doors were safe to open and which alleys would lead to dead ends. Daniel sometimes wondered how she could know so much, but whenever he asked, she only said, "I lived here once." That answer always felt too small, but Daniel accepted it. He had learned she revealed her secrets slowly, like drops of water falling into a well. Whispers among the people one afternoon, they reached a settlement hidden inside the ruins. Daniel had not expected it. From a distance, it looked like another broken district. But when they walked closer, he saw smoke rising from small fires, cloth stretched across fallen beams, and voices echoing softly. Dozens of aliens, men, women, even children, lived there in silence, moving carefully as though the world could crush them if they made too much noise. Their faces were thin from hunger, their clothes patched with scraps, but their eyes were sharp, filled with quiet strength. As Daniel and Lyra entered, all eyes turned toward them. Daniel felt the weight of their stares. Strangers were rare here. He tightened his grip on the staff in case things turned hostile. But something strange happened. The people were not looking at him. Their eyes locked on Lyra. Whispers rose. Look at her face. It is the same. Could it be? After all these years? Princess. Daniel's breath caught. He turned to Lyra, but she lowered her head quickly, pulling the hood of her cloak over her silver hair. Her steps grew fast, almost hurried, as if she wanted to escape before the whispers became shouts. A group of elders approached. They bowed low, not to Daniel but to her. One old woman reached out, her hands trembling, and whispered, "We thought you gone, my lady. We thought the royal guard had taken you forever." Lyra froze. Daniel saw her hands clenched tightly around the pendant. For a moment he thought she would deny it, but she only whispered, "Please, do not speak my name." Daniel's mind raced. Princess, Queen's child. The guard's words suddenly made sense. The truth was clear. Lyra was not just a survivor. She was royalty. The hidden truth later that night, after the settlement gave them food and a small place to rest, Daniel finally confronted her. They sat in a dim corner, firelight flickering across her face. "You're not just someone running from soldiers," he said quietly. "They called you princess. And these people, they bowed to you. Who are you really, Lyra?" She sat silently, staring into the flames. At last she spoke. "I am the daughter of the Queen of Celian. Or I was." Daniel's heart thudded. "A princess." She nodded slowly, her voice heavy with sorrow. "I was born in the Palace of Glass Towers. My mother ruled with wisdom, but enemies rose within her own council. The guard, once protectors, became her hunters. They betrayed us in a single night. My family scattered. I was taken away in secret, hidden by loyal hands. For years I lived among shadows, never speaking my name." Daniel leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. "And the Queen? Your mother? What happened to her?" Lyra's voice broke. "I do not know. Some say she was killed. Some say she still lives, hiding as I hide. I only know that the guard hunts us both." Silence fell between them. Daniel tried to absorb her words. He had thought of her as a fragile survivor. But now he saw something more. An heir to a fallen kingdom, carrying a burden larger than any he had known. Finally, he said, "You should have told me." Her eyes glistened. "Would you have stayed if you knew the truth?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes." He leaned closer, his voice firm. "Because I didn't stay for your secrets. I stayed for you." Her breath caught, and for a moment, Daniel thought he saw relief in her eyes, as if she had been waiting her whole life for someone to say those words. The royal guard returns. Their peace did not last long. Days later, while Daniel worked on adjusting the ship's power core, he heard the sound of boots outside the settlement. He froze. The people outside were shouting, scattering, running for cover. "Guard!" someone screamed. Daniel grabbed his staff and ran out. Black-armored soldiers marched into the settlement, their weapons glowing. Behind them floated drones that scanned every face with cold red light. The leader's voice boomed. "We know she is here. The lost heir. Bring her forth and no one will suffer." Fear rippled through the people. No one moved, but their silence was dangerous. The guard began dragging families out of their shelters. scanning each one roughly. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at Lyra, who stood frozen, her hood pulled low. She trembled, but her eyes were burning with both fear and pride. He stepped in front of her. "Go," he whispered. "I'll distract them." Before she could protest, Daniel strode forward, his staff in hand. "Looking for someone?" he called, his voice steady. The guard leader turned, scanning him. "A human? Out of place. Tell us where she is." Daniel smirked, though his heart raced. "Funny thing, I don't take orders from tin men." The soldier snarled, raising his weapon. Energy crackled. Daniel dodged as the blast shot past, slamming into stone. He swung his staff with all his strength, cracking it against the soldier's arm. Sparks flew. The people gasped. Chaos erupted. Soldiers fired wildly and families scattered in panic. Daniel ducked behind a wall, shouting for Lyra to run. She hesitated, her pendant glowing faintly, then finally fled into the shadows. The fight raged through the settlement. Daniel used every trick he knew, throwing rocks to distract drones, striking at weak joints in the armor, dodging blasts with desperate speed. He was only one man, but his courage bought precious time. Finally, the guard pulled back, frustrated. "The princess is gone," the leader spat. "But she cannot hide forever." With that, they retreated into the ruins, leaving destruction behind. Daniel collapsed to his knees, exhausted, his body bruised. The people gathered around him, some whispering in awe. "You fought them," one said. A human stood against the guard. Daniel only shook his head. "I didn't fight for glory. I fought for her." The choice that night, Lyra returned, her eyes filled with guilt. "You risked everything for me. You almost died." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady but soft. "I told you before, no one should face this alone." Her lips trembled, and she whispered, "You do not understand what it means. If I am found, I bring death to anyone near me. To protect me is to invite destruction." Daniel reached out, resting his hand gently on her shoulder. "Then let destruction come. We'll face it together." For a moment, she simply stared at him, her violet eyes shining with something between sorrow and hope. Then she nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. Together, toward the capital. The settlement elders gathered the next morning. They told Daniel and Lyra of whispers, rumors that the queen herself still lived, hidden in the ruins of the capital city. Many feared it was only a tale, but the elders believed. "If you wish to end the hunt," one elder said, bowing to Lyra, "you must find her. The people need their queen, and you, my lady, must stand beside her." Lyra trembled at the thought, but she did not refuse. She looked at Daniel. "Will you come with me?" Daniel gave a small smile. "You already know the answer." And so, with danger at their heels and hope in their hearts, the human and the princess set their path toward the capital, the heart of a fallen empire and the place where truth waited. The capital lay ahead like a sleeping giant. From a distance, Daniel could see the shattered towers reaching toward the sky, twisted steel and broken stone glinting in the sun's light. The city had once been alive with people and song, but now it breathed quietly, its streets empty, haunted by memories of glory and betrayal. Daniel and Lyra approached cautiously. Every corner held shadows, every alley could hide enemies. Daniel had grown used to survival in hostile places, but the weight of the capital pressed down differently. This was not just a world in ruin. It was the heart of a kingdom that had been torn apart. And somewhere inside, the queen might still live. Lyra walked beside him, silent, her pendant glowing faintly. She had not spoken much since the settlement, her thoughts clearly with what they would face ahead. Daniel noticed her hand occasionally brush the pendant. He had learned by now that it was more than a charm. It was a key to her past, a shield against the dangers that still pursued her. Secrets of the streets. The streets of the capital were eerily empty. Broken banners hung from collapsed towers, and the wind carried a faint metallic scent of rusted machines. Daniel led the way, checking every doorway, every shadowed corner. Lyra followed, her steps silent but purposeful. At one point, they saw movement ahead, figures crouched near the edge of a fallen wall. Daniel raised his staff ready, but Lyra put her hand on his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "They are not enemies." Two young aliens approached them slowly, holding hands. They looked terrified but hopeful at the same time. Their eyes locked on Lyra. You survived?" One of them whispered. Lyra nodded, her own voice trembling. "Yes, but we must move quickly. They are close. The children led them to a hidden underground path beneath the city. Daniel followed, his eyes alert. He had learned that survival was not just about strength. It was about noticing details others overlooked. Every crack in the wall, every flicker of light might reveal a hidden enemy. The hidden court hours later, they emerged in a vast hall beneath the heart of the capital. Here, the remnants of the old court had gathered. Resistance fighters, loyal to the queen, waited in secret. They were a mix of adults and young warriors armed with salvaged weapons and hopes stronger than any metal. At the far end of the hall, a figure emerged. She was older than Lyra, her hair streaked with silver, her robes torn but regal. Her eyes scanned the room, sharp and commanding even in exhaustion. Daniel could see the weight of years in her shoulders, the sorrow of a mother who had lost everything. When the queen's eyes fell on Lyra, time seemed to stop. The hall was silent. Daniel watched as her expression shifted. First disbelief, then shock, and finally, the flood of emotion he had never seen before. The queen's knees gave way and she fell to the ground, trembling. "No, it cannot be," she whispered, her voice cracking. Tears ran down her face. "Lyra, my daughter." Lyra froze, unable to speak. Her pendant glowed faintly and she took a cautious step forward. Daniel moved beside her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. The queen reached out, trembling as if to touch Lyra and confirm she was real. Slowly, carefully, Lyra stepped forward and knelt beside her mother. The two of them embraced, their tears mixing, their grief and relief merging into one. Daniel watched quietly. He had faced many dangers, but he had never witnessed such raw emotion. The weight of lost years, of survival, of hope finally realized. The princess he had protected for weeks was not just a survivor. She was a daughter reunited with her mother, the queen of a fallen empire. The royal guard arrives. Their moment of reunion was cut short. The sound of boots echoed through the upper halls. The royal guard had found them. Daniel's heart pounded, but he did not hesitate. He had fought them before, and he would fight them again. The queen looked at Daniel with wide eyes. You will fight for us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel nodded. "I fight for her, and now for you too." The guards stormed into the hall, their black armor glinting in the light of broken windows. Weapons hummed with energy, ready to strike. But Daniel stood firm, his staff in hand. He had learned their patterns, their weaknesses, and he was not afraid to act. He moved quickly, blocking shots and striking at armored soldiers with precision. The resistance fighters joined him, inspired by his courage. Daniel had always been just one human, small and fragile compared to the powerful aliens, but his bravery was larger than anyone expected. The fight raged through the hall. Sparks flew, walls cracked, and the air filled with shouts and the hum of energy weapons. Daniel protected Lyra at every turn, moving her behind cover, striking whenever enemies got too close. Even as the battle intensified, he noticed the queen rising slowly from the ground. She carried herself with dignity despite her tears, commanding the resistance with her presence alone. Lyra watched her mother, pride and love shining in her eyes. The bond of trust finally. After a tense hour, the royal guard faltered. Daniel's relentless defense and the queen's inspired leadership forced them to retreat. The hall was quiet once more, save for the heavy breathing of fighters and the soft sobs of reunion. Lyra turned to Daniel, her eyes full of gratitude. You risked your life for me." "For us," Daniel shook his head. "I said I would protect you. I meant it." "That hasn't changed." The queen approached, still trembling, but her voice was strong. "You are not just a protector, human. You are part of this family now." Daniel felt the weight of her words, but also their truth. He had never sought fame or reward. He had only wanted to survive. Yet here he was, in the heart of a fallen empire, standing beside a queen and her daughter, facing enemies that had once seemed unstoppable. For the first time, he realized the world was larger than survival. It was about courage, trust, and the bonds between people. Even across stars and species, a single human could make a difference. Preparing for the future, that night the queen called a council in the hall. Daniel and Lyra stood together as the remnants of the court gathered. Maps were spread, plans whispered, and strategies formed. The royal guard could return at any moment. The queen turned to Daniel. "You will not leave, will you?" she asked softly. Daniel met her gaze. "I will stay. If Lyra needs me, then I stay. The queen nodded, tears still glistening. She placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. You have survived, my daughter, but together we will reclaim what was lost. And with him, her gaze flicked to Daniel. We might just succeed. Lyra smiled, leaning slightly against Daniel, her trust complete. For the first time, Daniel saw the full truth, not just of Lyra's identity, but of the hope she carried. The fallen capital was no longer silent. It breathed with possibility. As they prepared for what lay ahead, Daniel felt a strange calm settle over him. The fight was far from over, but now they had each other, and that made all the difference. The capital city had not been truly silent for months, but now, in the hours before dawn, it seemed to hold its breath. The queen, Lyra, and Daniel stood at the heart of the ruined palace, surrounded by loyal fighters. They had spent days preparing, fortifying defenses, and strategizing for the inevitable return of the royal guard. Daniel looked around at the remnants of the court, at the people who had risked everything to survive, and then at Lyra. She stood taller than he had ever seen her, her silver hair catching the faint light, her violet eyes burning with determination. No longer just a princess in hiding, she was the rightful heir, ready to claim her place beside her mother. I don't know what will happen, Daniel said quietly, speaking to Lyra rather than the crowd. But whatever comes, we face it together. She gave him a small smile, leaning closer. Together, she whispered, and for the first time there was no fear in her voice. The return of the guard. The first signs came as distant lights on the horizon, moving fast across the ruins. The royal guard had returned, larger and more organized than ever, carrying weapons that hummed with destructive energy. Daniel's heart raced, but he stood firm, ready to defend the people who had come to trust him. The queen, regal even in the shadows of her fallen palace, raised her hand. We fight not for vengeance, but for our people. Protect the innocent. Protect Lyra, and protect our future. Daniel gripped his staff tightly. Around him, fighters took their positions, forming a defensive line. The air was tense, heavy with anticipation, every breath a reminder that the outcome would decide the fate of the kingdom. Battle in the capital. The first wave of soldiers crashed against the walls like a storm. Energy blasts lit up the night, striking stone and metal, but the defenders held their ground. Daniel moved with precision, dodging bolts and striking at armor joints. Every hit he landed gave the defenders hope. Lyra used her pendant to protect clusters of fighters, its glow shimmering against the oncoming assault. She had learned to control its power, guiding its energy to form barriers, shields, and occasional bursts to push enemies back. Even in the chaos, Daniel could see her growing stronger with each passing moment. The queen, despite her years, commanded from the center, directing fighters, organizing reinforcements, and inspiring courage. Daniel realized that her leadership was what had kept the remnants alive, hidden and ready. Without her, Lyra and the people would have been hunted to extinction long ago. Daniel fought side by side with Lyra, striking at soldiers who threatened her, lifting debris to protect civilians, and rallying the resistance wherever the line faltered. Each time he saved a life, the bond between him and Lyra strengthened. He realized he had never been so alive, so certain that he belonged somewhere beyond the drifting silence of space. Turning, the tide hours passed, and the battle raged. The guards' numbers were vast, but they had underestimated the will of the people and the courage of a single human. Daniel found himself at the center of the fighting, blocking paths, creating openings, and giving the resistance a chance to counterattack. At one critical moment, the guard leader appeared atop a shattered tower, calling for Lyra to surrender. Daniel's blood boiled. He leapt forward, dodging bolts, swinging his staff with everything he had. Sparks flew as he struck the leader's weapon, causing the armored soldier to stumble. The queen's forces surged forward, pushing the guard back. Lyra joined him, her pendant glowing fiercely. She unleashed a burst of energy that knocked down a line of approaching soldiers, her strength surpassing anything Daniel had imagined. Together, human and princess, they turned the tide, breaking the guard's formation. The soldiers, shocked by the combined might and courage, began retreating. Daniel chased a few stragglers, ensuring none could regroup and strike again. The remaining troops fled into the ruins, leaving the capital finally in peace. Reclaiming the throne with the battle over, the survivors gathered. The queen approached her daughter, tears streaming down her face once more. "My child," she said softly, "you have returned, and now we can rebuild what was lost." Lyra knelt before her mother, overwhelmed by the moment. Daniel stood beside her, offering support without words. He had seen Lyra grow from a frightened survivor into a strong, determined leader. He felt proud, not for himself but for the people he had helped protect. The Queen rose, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "The kingdom belongs to you, my daughter, and to those who stood by us." She looked at Daniel, "and to this human who has shown courage beyond any of us imagined. You have earned a place among us." Daniel shook his head humbly. "I did what anyone would do. I fought for life, not titles." The Queen smiled. "Then your heart is stronger than most, and that strength is exactly what this kingdom needs." A new beginning. In the days that followed, Daniel helped rebuild the capital. He repaired machines, fortified walls, and trained the remaining fighters. Lyra worked beside her mother, restoring order, protecting the people, and reclaiming what the guard had taken. Despite the work and dangers, Daniel noticed something unexpected. He felt a sense of belonging he had never known among the stars. The people respected him, Lyra trusted him, and even the Queen acknowledged his courage. He realized he had found not just a home, but a purpose. One evening, as the sun set over the repaired towers, Lyra approached Daniel. Her hair caught the light, her eyes soft and warm. "You stayed," she said simply. Daniel nodded. "I promised." "I stay." She smiled, leaning slightly against him. "I could not have done this without you." Daniel felt a warmth he had never known. "And I could not have faced this without you," he replied. The legacy of the royal guard had been defeated. The Queen reclaimed her throne, and the kingdom had hope again. Yet Daniel knew the fight was never truly over. There would be threats, dangers, and challenges, but he was no longer alone. He stood beside Lyra and the Queen on the balcony of the restored palace, looking over the city. Fires burned in celebration below, and the people cheered for their heroes. Daniel's heart swelled. He had begun as a lonely human drifting through space, but now he was part of something greater, a kingdom, a family, and a legacy of courage. The Queen placed her hand on Lyra's shoulder. "The future is yours, my daughter. Protect it well." Lyra looked at Daniel. "And together we will," she said. Daniel smiled, realizing that this world, once broken and silent, had given him something no stars in the void ever could: purpose, trust, and a place to belong. Above them, the sun set slowly, painting the sky in gold and violet. The ruins of the past stood as a reminder of what had been lost, but the restored palace, the people, and the courage of one human reminded everyone that hope could survive even the darkest nights. And in that moment, Daniel knew he had found a home not just among the stars, but in the hearts of those he had fought for, and in the bond he shared with the princess who had trusted him completely.